filing in here, welcome. Happy whatever day this is. Tuesday? Tuesday. I'm Lillian Brislin. If you haven't met me before, I'm the director of the Food Connection. And let me introduce Chef Tanya Whitehouse.
Hello,
She's
good afternoon.
our Learning Kitchen Program Manager. I am going to, Tanya, make you... There we go. Now everyone should see both Tanya and her cutting board. Let me know in the chat if you don't see it. Oh, we've got a few more people shuffling in. So how today is going to work is we use the buddy system with our live cooking demos. So I'm the buddy and Tanya's the chef. So if you have any questions or if you need her to repeat something or slow down, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll read it out loud for Tanya so she can keep her eyes on her knives and digits and not lose any pinky fingertips. Y'all, I had to take a friend to the emergency room because she got a new mandolin.
They like to bite. They really do.
She called me. She said, when do you know if you have to go to the emergency room? And like my mother told me, if you're asking, the answer is go. So I'd invite everyone to just say hello in the chat if you like. Say your name and where you're dialing in from. And otherwise, I'll let Chef Tanya take it away.
Okay, well, I'm going to share a screen for a minute. So this may mess up all your pinning. Just for a bit, Lily. I do have a few slides just to get us going today before we get into the actual, there we go. Before we get into the actual demo part, and I've got a lot going on today, and I know when I sent out the materials, you may have looked at that big chart and went, what? But the reason I did it that way is so that basically you can use whatever you have on hand today. The only thing that is really necessary is eggs. Everything else, you can really be creative with it. You can improvise and you can be really resourceful with whatever you currently have in your kitchen. And I'll show you that today. We're going to make lots of different stuff. But we're going to take our time. We have an hour and a half. This is a very quick dish to do normally. So I want to go over just a few things and kind of show you why I chose this dish. It's a really simple one. So why am I doing a class on this? And also so that we can go over the 3 different kinds that I was so big on advertising. First of all, I do want to thank the Community Farm Alliance because they have provided us with a grant. If you were able to attend to the Train the Trainer course, they made that possible. And all of these classes, there'll be 4 in total throughout the academic year. They've made all of these possible, as well as some recipe videos that we're working on for you, and all sorts of resources. So we want to thank them for that grant. We are finishing up our semester here, so you may see a video come out before the end of the year, but then we'll gear up first thing in 2021 to get all of those other materials out to you. Again, take your time. I'll go slow. I'll repeat things if you are cooking along with me. If you can't see things well, let me know. We do have a lot of issues with shadows in here. So if I need to grab a different color cutting board or something like that for visibility, you just let me know, put it in the chat. Lily will call it out to me. And even then, if you're not keeping up, that's fine. I tend to go just a wee bit quicker for demo purposes, sort of magic of TV purposes. I may not saute my onions 5 minutes like it says to, but I'll scoot it along a little bit so that I can kind of get the demo down and then be there to answer questions for you. Now, frittata, where did it come from? Basically, frittata probably came pretty soon after people started using eggs. It's an Italian dish. It just, friggere means fried. It also means a little messy or a little crazy. So kind of like, it's like the Italian way, like a high una frittata means to be, you know, kind of a hot mess. So it's a great expression as well. It's been developed. It's one of those dishes everybody kind of grows up knowing how to make. So it's not really found on a lot of menus. It's not really found in a lot of cookbooks because it's kind of like us putting on a pot of pinto beans. You've just grown up doing it. So nobody thinks to write a recipe how to do it. And mostly it's to use up leftovers. So a lot of Italians have a big pasta dish on a Sunday, and they have leftover pasta and vegetable sides and things like that. Well, they'll just take all of that, fry it up a little bit, and add some egg. And there you go, you have a frittata. It's very homespun usually, but in Naples, there is a restaurant that does put it on the menu, and it's different every time. And I love this description. The restaurant's called Matozzi, and it's a restaurant devoted to Neapolitan classics. And every day, the frittata mascheroni is a little different. Chunks of cheese, nest inside rigatoni, bits of ham and sausage. And in keeping with the home cooking ethos, though, the frittata is always made in a cast iron skillet, which I've made plenty of frittatas in cast iron skillets, and that were undoubtedly primed with sizzling lard. So that is a well-seasoned cast iron skillet that's going to impart also a little bit of flavor. So we're going to do it 3 ways today. The traditional, which is in an oven-proof skillet, an iron skillet if you've got one, or just, I am going to actually use these non-stick ones so that my frittata flips out really well. Traditionally, you flip a frittata over in the pan, but I have found the very easy way of just sticking it under a broiler. So I've got my oven on 400 right now. And if you don't have yours on, you may want to give it a turn. Or you could wait till the end and just turn your broiler on, and we'll finish the top of the traditional frittata. But we are gonna, if you are doing the muffin pan method, we'll just bake those, okay? We won't finish those under the broiler. And then the last method that we're going to use is in a mug in a microwave. This is something we do for students, many of whom are in dorms on campus, and about the only cooking device they have is a microwave, unless they are breaking some rules there. So it's something that we provide little kits for them to pick up. They take to their dorms, and they can usually do it with what they have in their dorm rooms. And I'll show you that method last because it's really quick. But first, we're going to get to the sides. I did include a couple of sides today to show you how frittata can be a full meal and not just a breakfast. So we're going to get to the spiced sweet potatoes first because they'll take the longest. If you're cooking along with me, it's pretty simple. We're just going to peel those, cut those up, toss them with oil, salt, pepper, and some spices. Your choice. I put some suggestions in the recipe that I sent out, but it's up to you. If you like them a little spicier, maybe you use a little cayenne or something, or a little bit more chili powder than I've listed. You get to decide. And we'll toss those in the oven. And then at the end, we'll do some sauteed kale as we let our frittata rest. I always like to plan things around. You have to cook the frittata for a little while. It has to sit and rest before you flip it. So I like to have other things to do. Then once we get our sweet potatoes going, we're going to do all of our mise en place for all 3 of the different types of frittata. So if you're only doing one method, you only have to follow along with that method. But I am going to do all of the setup. Mise en place means everything in its place. So I'm going to get all of the veggies, all of the meats, and everything ready for each type of frittata. Any kind of ingredient that you have that might take a long time to cook or that contains a lot of water, you might want to go ahead and par cook. I've got some Brussels sprouts. I'm going to shave those thin, or else I would par cook those. I have a couple of just mealy potatoes, Idaho potatoes in the oven right now. I'm going to pull out in a second. Actually, I'm going to pull those out now. Those would take too long in the pan, so I par cooked those. If you want to use any kind of meats today, you want to go ahead and par cook those for the most part, or it might take you a little longer to finish off your frittata. And go ahead and we'll grate cheeses, crumble and chop things, and the method for each of these is basically the same. And the recipe is that there is no recipe. This is a very forgiving dish. Basically, you take whatever you want to put in it and you whisk up some eggs, maybe with a little milk, and that's not even necessary. The whisked eggs are the part. Be resourceful, be creative. If there's a dish that you like, you could deconstruct it and put it into a frittata. I was even thinking, it was like, oh, I like eggs on top of that. I like eggs on top of that. I wonder if you could turn that into a frittata. So that kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of, oh, we could make like a hash frittata. So you could have your potatoes, onions, and brisket, your corned beef, like you would for a normal corned beef hash, and put that in the pan and put your eggs in. have a hash frittata, or bibimbap, which is a Korean dish with rice and braised beef and some kimchi. But take all those elements, fry them in the pan, throw the eggs in instead of throwing one in on top. And then my last thought was, we love chilaquiles for breakfast around here, which is a dish where you heat up a sauce, kind of an enchilada type sauce, and you put corn tortilla or tortilla chips in it to soften, and then you put an egg on top. Well, you can make your chilaquiles chips, and then you put an egg mixture in, and then you could even add like beans and salsa and cheese and things like that, and have a chilaquiles frittata. So you can really get creative. It's easy to get the family involved, especially with the muffin tin version. It's really nice. Each member of the family can customize their own frittatas. So it's a great way. This is kind of, you could do this kind of like bulk prep cooking, or like you're making a bar, a frittata bar with the family. And we'll talk a little bit more about those steps later. I'm gonna stop sharing now, and we're gonna get down to cooking. So good, we've got the cutting board pinned. That's perfect. So I've got my kits. If you attended our Train the Trainer workshop, you know that I love to work in kits. I've got a little bit of canola oil here. I'm gonna do just a couple of these sweet potatoes, otherwise that'll be a lot, as much as I love sweet potato fries. And then on my board here, I have some random spices. I think I mentioned a few to you. If you pulled those together, you can feel free to use those. I have a little bit of ancho chili powder, or you could use just regular chili powder like you used to make chili. I have a little onion powder, just a smidge of allspice, some paprika, garlic powder, smoked paprika, and I just toasted and ground some cumin. Made this kitchen smell so good. So I have all of these different spices, and that is basically it. I'm gonna grab a little salt and a little pepper, and that will complete this recipe. So easy enough, and you really don't even have to peel these, but I actually, for the fries, I actually prefer it. So I'm gonna get my discard bowl here. I'm just gonna take the peel off real quick. But like I said, this isn't even a necessary step. If you are taking the peel off, one tip I have, if you can get through this sort of whitish bit down to the deeper orange flesh, then unlike white potatoes, these will not oxidize as bad, but you do have to get past that kind of whitish layer of the peel into the dark orange. Now you could cut these up either like small French fries, or you could cut them up like wedges. They'll take a little bit longer in the oven. And I'm going to use the little kind of scoop on the end to get out any dark spots. Eyes. Although I'm not sure if sweet potatoes have true eyes like an Idaho does. Got some hung in there. Now you could use any spice blend you like. If I think somewhere in there I mentioned that if you just wanted to, that may have been for another part of the recipe, but if you just wanted to grab some taco seasoning, that would work. If you want to go a little bit more sweet and hot, use some cinnamon and some cayenne, and maybe even a little bit of brown sugar if you want some super caramelized sweet potato fries. I'm gonna stop there and cut off any of the, yes.
Do you put those sweet potato scraps in your stock pot, or is there anything else you do with them?
I do put them in the stock pot. They do add sweetness, especially if I don't have a ton of carrot to go into my stock. Sweet potatoes will add a kind of an earthy sweetness. If you don't have a lot of carrot, you can put regular potato peels in stock too, as long as they're clean, and they give it kind of an earthiness. Now, I am holding my knife by the handle, pinching on either side with my thumb and forefinger. With the other hand, I'm gonna always keep that wildcat claw, and I'm holding, even though we've got a roly-poly potato here, I'm holding it with my claw. Tip goes down first, then the blade does the work. And I'm gonna cut these kind of in wedges. I like the big wedges. So I'm kind of going in diagonal for the first cut. And I'll do that again. So claw, have, get me 2 stable sides, 2 manageable pieces. I'm always about stability and manageability when breaking down veg, especially a hard one like root veg. Okay, so we've got potatoes cut up, and take your time if you're joining with me on this. And if you're cutting a few more, if you're doing this for your whole family. I've just got a few here. And then I've got this canola. This is actually a Kentucky Proud non-GMO canola oil. You could use any kind of cooking oil. You could use olive oil if you wanted to. Just enough, just to drizzle. And then I like to toss. You could do this with a spatula. I don't see the point in dirtying up something else. We'll get plenty of spatulas dirty today. And then sprinkle a really decent sprinkle of salt. Think about how sweet these sweet potatoes are. And a sprinkle of pepper. And then once you get them seasoned the way you like, toss again. Then you can add spices and do them in the amounts you want. So like paprika is really mild. You can add a lot of that. Maybe go easy on the garlic powder. I like a lot of cumin, so I'm gonna be adding, I'm just pinching. Now, if you wanna measure, you can certainly do that. So about a 1/4 teaspoon of the garlic powder, and about the same of a little onion powder. I'm gonna go about half on the paprika. And like I said, you can do whatever. And I'm gonna go maybe even a little bit more on the cumin, get that earthy, smoky flavor. About a 1/4 teaspoon of that ancho chili powder, and just the tiniest pinch of allspice. Don't want that coming through, just want that in the background. And then a little sprinkle, don't want to overwhelm with the smoked paprika. And then another toss. Now, if you're worried about those distributing well, what you may want to do is go ahead and pre-mix all your spices if you want to. I like keeping them separate. That way you don't have leftover mix that you might have trouble using later. But if you're worried about like a big area of just garlic powder, then you can mix them all together at the beginning. I'm going to put those. I have a sheet pan here. And as I said, my oven is on 400. And you just want to pour them out onto the sheet pan. And then make sure that they're in a single layer. This is a tiny bit crowded. You just want to make sure that they can get the hot air all around. Okay, so spread them out in a single layer, and that's going to go into the 400-degree oven. And depending on their size, I say those are going to take at least 12 to 15 minutes, if not a little longer. So now that's in, we can start on all of our mies for the different types of frittata. So first things first, let's start with some veg here. And I've kind of put things into kits. So I'm gonna start out, this is where my potatoes are gonna go. I've got the roasted white potatoes. Got a little red cabbage here. Some Brussels, this is my fall frittata, some Brussels sprouts, and just a few baby bellas. So we're gonna start chopping all this up. Now for my par-cooked potatoes, all I wanna do on those is just slice. We're gonna get some thin slices here. This is great for leftover baked potatoes. Now you'll notice that if you put these in, if you've ever had a Spanish omelet, or that's called a tortilla, It's also an open face egg dish, egg pie, crustless egg pie. Sometimes there's onion, sometimes there's not. That is a big contentious deal in Spain. It depends on what area of Spain you come from, whether or not you put onion in. But this is kind of reminiscent of that. So you're cooking potatoes, sliced potatoes. You could add a little onion to this if you wanted. If you had, you know, like steak and a baked potato, and these are left over, this would be great. And then I'm going to also, let me go ahead and slice my mushrooms here. I've just washed them, taken the stems off. I do pre-wash most of my ingredients. I'm not even using my little prep bowls right here right now because all of this is gonna go straight into my pan. If you have particular veg and you have questions about should you be par cooking it or something, just let me know. There's a lot that you can throw in the oven and just roast. Now, if I were using wedges of the Brussels sprouts, I would probably par roast them, but I am actually gonna slice these very thin. I'm gonna leave the little leaves that fall off. And so gotta use that claw. And thin slices, almost like I'm shredding tiny cabbage. And you notice I get to the point where I might even have to let the tip just stay on the board. Actually, forgot to, let's take the end off that one. It just takes off those outer leaves that might have a little beetle bite on them. Little bit of dark spots. So I like to take off that end and the outer leaves, but I love the little leaves that fall off that don't have any spots. We'll leave that, that's probably pretty good. And then just a tiny little wedge of this beautiful red cabbage. Cabbage tends to really increase in volume as you shred it, so I'm not going to use a very big piece of this. Get it into a manageable piece to shred. And then again, just slice very thin.
Tanya, one thing you're always emphasizing is, and I think I've finally started to do it, is how people eat with their eyes. And so the purple from that cabbage, just looking at these colors here, it's so enticing.
Yes, we had this left over, but also I thought this would be gorgeous. And also I think people may not think to put cabbage or Brussels sprouts or something in a frittata. So actually I will throw these into bowls because we're gonna cook all this up at once. So I'm gonna throw everything into prep. I have to back myself up on that one. I'm gonna throw the Brussels and the cabbage in the same bowl because they'll cook at the same rate. Sort of similar vegetables, similar water amount. You always kind of keep things together that cook at the same rate, either because of their fibrousness and density or their water or their sugar. Sugar can affect how quickly something cooks. Okay, so there's all my stuff for that frittata. Then I'm going to do the other kit, and this is very traditional. We'll set this over here. This one is much more traditional. Now, like I said, frittatas are used to use up leftover ingredients. So I have some leftover spiral pasta here. We actually, this was from a pasta demo. It was in the freezer. It was already cooked. I thought, oh, perfect. I need to use it up anyway. This is just a very basic tomato sauce, kind of a marinara sauce that I made on Friday for our first Friday breakfast. I have some red pepper, and I did have an onion. I purchased an onion. Here we go. Pepper, onion, and mushrooms. And then I have, not technically a cheese, but ricotta. And we're going to add a little lemon to that. Lemon and crushed black pepper. That's my favorite additions to ricotta cheese. And then I've got a little pecorino. You can pretty much use any kind of cheese in a frittata or anything creamy. It works really well. So we're gonna get ourselves set for this sort of, and oh, I also have some sausage. So we're making kind of like an Italian dish type frittata with this one. So I'm gonna cut up, we'll do onions several ways today. I'm gonna dice this one and I'm gonna dice the pepper. So let's start with the onion. I always love starting with the onion. Again, you want to get your onion in a very manageable state. Clean off my board here. Nice visual field. All right, so you want to hold on to this with your claw because it's going to want to roll. You're going to slice off the stem. This is good for any onion. Slice off the root. And that gives you a flat surface. And if you need me to do this 2 times, let me know. I'm going to do it at least once. Now, I'm going to have the onion. And that makes it easy. You can see the papery stuff just fell off. Set my discard bowl a little closer so I'm not reaching in front of the camera. There we go. All right, so I want to take off anything papery. And then right here where it looks kind of leathery and papery on that outer layer, I'm going to pull that off as well. Now you can still see there's a little bit of the root left, and that's great because that way you can tell we want to kind of work from stem to root when we dice. This is going to take 3 different kinds of cuts, and I'm going to move it toward the edge. If you need me to get a different color cutting board, let me know. I really want you to see this. So I'm moving it toward the edge so the handle of my knife isn't going to make my knife go all crooked. Okay, if I did it over here, see, having to hold it. So I'm going to pull it toward the edge where the handle hangs off. Now, the knife is parallel to the cutting board, and I'm just going to lift it, okay, about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch. And I'm going to cut almost, but not all the way through the onion. And I'll show you. I'm going to stop about right there. So there's about a finger's width. We're going to leave this bottom half attached until we actually do the dice. So that is one cut, one slice. And I'm going to lift up, still keeping parallel. I'm going to lift up 3/8 of an inch, keeping all of my slices the same width. And again, stopping before I go all the way through. Now I'm going to turn the onion toward me. So this attached end is away from me. And I'm just going to take the tip end of the knife and I'm pressing down. I'm not sawing, I'm not pushing in, I'm just pressing completely down with the tip. And again, leaving that root end attached. So now that I have strips of onion that are still all attached, so that when I cut across those strips, and this is pretty much breaking down all veg into a chop or a dice. You slice and then you make strips and then you cut across those strips to make your little cubes, and that's your dice. Now, when you get to the end over here, just slice it. You don't want to include that little rough bit of the root. So I cut over to that, flip it around, cut over to that, and then I just discard that little rough end. And you have a perfectly medium diced onion. And we'll use quite a bit of onion. So I'm going to put this in a bowl. And it's a similar process for the pepper. If you have any kind of bell pepper today, any color, any flavor will work. I'm going to slice off the stem end, slice off the bottom. And that allows me to stand it up. You can use these little pieces as well. But what I love about it standing, I don't even have to touch it. And I can take my knife and just go straight down in between a rib so that I can open up the pepper. And that way, with that opening, cutting away from myself, not toward my fingers, I can push the knife in and just sort of cut through all of these ribs. And I roll it around and I try to get all the pith. I'm trying to show you how I'm doing this. I try to get all the pith. I'm sort of rolling the ribs and seed pod out as I go, as I slice through them. And if you do this carefully, you can pull out the entire seed pod ribs middle section, toss that away, and then you don't have very much rib left. The rib there's nothing wrong with it. It won't harm you, but it's just sort of a foamy texture and it doesn't have much flavor. So I'm gonna even cut those out away from me, of course. So now, if I turn this over and kind of smash it a little bit, I have this wonderful rectangle that makes it easy to cut. I'm gonna cut it in half so that it's a manageable size. And then we're gonna cut those into strips. If you cut your onion into a julienne, if you want everything stripped so that you get the little kind of curls in your frittata, that's fine. I'm gonna cut down into a dice because we're using these for all different size frittatas. And I'm actually gonna do both sides because we may decide to throw this in. When we get to the muffin cups, you'll see why I'm preparing so much different stuff. All right. So I'm gonna put this. And if you're curious about how to use those little bumpy tops and bottoms, I'll show you that real quick. So you just slice those up too. If they're really thick, then you may want to very carefully split them in half, but otherwise you're cutting into sticks too. They're not going to form the same perfect cubes, but they'll be close enough to use in something really mixed together like a frittata or a soup or a stew, or on a pizza where they'll get covered with cheese. Okay. Let's give this a wipe. The only thing about using a lot of colorful veg is that your cutting board gets really colorful too. And then for the shrooms, I just kind of went with sort of a pizza theme for this. So I've got the tomato sauce, or like like a baked pasta. If your kids are really into pizza, you may even want to use some pepperoni or something that would get them to eat this. Their favorite toppings, olives. I'm going to cut these mushrooms up a little bit smaller into half and then slice. So you've got all this pasta in here, and I don't want the veggies to make it difficult to eat your bite. These little ones I'm just going to slice. Now, I just give my mushrooms, especially if it's just a Bella or a button or something from the grocery store, just give it a quick rinse. If you have wild mushrooms or portobellos, you may want to spend a little bit more time like gently wiping the mushrooms rather than rinsing them, because you want to make sure those get really clean. All right, and then with my ricotta, I have a tiny spat over here. And we're going to use just a wee bit of this because we don't want to keep our eggs from setting. So maybe about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup.
Here's a crazy idea, Tanya.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of like access to ricotta. Would cottage cheese ever work in this context?
Yes, small curd cottage cheese would be great. Sorry about that. Small curd cottage cheese would be great, or you can take cottage cheese and zhuzh it in your food processor. And basically it's almost the same consistency of ricotta. So yeah, and it's much more accessible, a lot more stores carry it, it's a little bit cheaper, that kind of thing. And sometimes cottage, like we've been having really good giveaways through the school system in my home county, and they're giving away like boxes of dairy, and I could see maybe cottage cheese coming in some of that. Little bit of lemon zest. You don't have to do the lemon zest, but it really does give it a nice little kick. And then I'm just gonna grate. And you could use a tiny grater for this. You don't have to have a zester or a box grater with a, I'll show you. I have the box grater right here. If you have a box grater that has these little holes on it, this is what you would use for the tiny grate, for kind of a zest.
The diamonds of knuckle death. That's how I think of them.
I mean, I see people like start grating on these, and I'm like, you've obviously never cleaned that side of a, a box grater before, because they just start over here. So a little bit of any kind of hard Italian cheese, Parmesan, Pecorino, even an aged Asiago would be anything hard. If you have like even a Greek Mazzitro might be really good. Then I love just a lot of cracked black pepper in ricotta as well. That sweetness is just, and the floral heat kind of kick from the pepper is just marvelous. Okay, so that's our second frittata set up. And let's put this back on there. And I'll probably keep the pecorino out. And then the only other thing I'm gonna do really quickly, and this is for variety on my muffin, is I'm going to cut up a little broccoli. You could use any kind of green veg, really. I'm gonna cut these fairly tiny, so I'm gonna go in real tight on the florets first. I'm just using the stem like a handle. And y'all know, if you've had a class with me with broccoli, how much I love the stems. So I'm gonna cut these florets up, just kind of rough chopping into tiny bites. And then I'm gonna cut up the little tiny parts of the stem. And if it comes off kind of big like this, you just chop. And then I'm gonna even cut the big stem, but I'm gonna peel it first. And you can peel it with a knife like this. I find it quick. This is kind of restaurant chef style, just to kind of take, I hardly, we always just kind of keep our chef knives in our hands, and that's about all we do. Toss away all that tough peel and then make thin little slices so that these cook up. I also have, our fries are done. Didn't even check the time on those, just smelling. All right, so look at these. I hope if you've done them at home, yours are getting close as well.
Tanya, I've got two questions. One I'll ask now. The perennial question that Melissa's asking that is also mine, is there any way to get sweet potatoes a little bit crisp? Or are they naturally going to be a softer fry?
They are going to naturally be a softer fry. The thing about sweet potatoes, and the reason why you can't like substitute them kind of one for one for regular mealy or waxy potatoes, is their water content. They contain a lot more water. They're much more fibrous too. And so I think, the only way I have found to get crisp on those is to kind of get them charred a little bit, which I don't mind, but you got to be careful because it can go from like a little char on the ends and edges to just blackened. So, and that's no good. So yeah, that's the hard, like I love making the little piped out dauphin potatoes. It's a very traditional French way, and I've always just desired to do a sweet potato version, and you cannot get sweet potatoes dry enough, really. They usually just go when you pipe them out. It's so disappointing. Okay, so I've just got some broccoli. I also have some sun-dried tomatoes. So these are kind of my random items I'm going to add to the frittata cups. I have this sausage over here. Actually, is there anything else I need to chop up before I put meat on my board? Actually, I will wait. I'll save that till last. I'm going to, the only other ingredients I have today are just a bag of spinach. Now, you'll notice this is what I'm using for the frittata in a mug. This is something I think that, like some kind of salad mix is something I think students can have in the dorm. Or so if, I'm reading the book Pressure Cooker, and I think about the family who's living in kind of like a residence hotel, and they just have a little kitchenette. So their space is limited for it's a mini fridge, right? So I'm thinking maybe they could have a little salad mix. And then this, I like pointing these out as roasted red peppers as a pantry item. They're not super expensive. And also, I mean, they stay good until you open them. So that's something I think maybe college student or someone who's living in a space that may not have the same kind of access to different cooking or kitchens like we do might be able to still have. So there's spinach, and I'm gonna just take one of these roasted red peppers. You can also freeze roasted red peppers. They freeze pretty well because they're already, they're already cooked. So their cells are already broken down. So you don't get a lot of the deflate like you do with fresh vegetables. So same process as with the raw one almost, except these are already cooked. You just slice them. I'm just going to do a really rough chop on this. And so that's our roasted red pepper. If you have any veg I'm not covering, because I think that's the end of my veg. Oh, I do want to cut up my red onion, and I'm going to julienne my red onion. So you will see both cuts of the onion today that we typically use. All right, so for julienne, I'm going to do the same thing. Take off that little stem end. If you're roasting a red onion, you don't want to take too much of your root end off, but I am sauteing. And then you cut it in half, take off that outer layer again. Why red onion? Basically, you can use any onion you want to, but red have more depth of flavor than I think the white, and they're not quite as sweet as the yellow. Now for julienne, all of these little lines that you see on the onion, we're going to follow those. And I'm just going to use my claw on top and follow those little lines and make slices all the way around, kind of angling it. Now, when it gets over here, if it gets a little wobbly on this side and it's thicker on that side, turn it on that one. It'll make it easier to slice. This is going to be for my kale. Or you can, if you're not doing kale, then you could do this for your frittata. You can also make pretty little patterns in frittatas if you have the time and the inclination. All right, so that's the last of my veg. So I have some little piggy sausage links, and I'm gonna cut, I've cooked those, I'm gonna cut those up. I have a little bit of bacon that I cooked a little too long. Just gonna do about, well, I'm gonna do 3 or like 5 of the sausage because I'm putting those in the sort of pasta. And see, even I need to split up my little pile sometimes because it's just more manageable. And then I'm gonna take the bacon that's not burnt. And chop that. You could do ham if you have leftover chicken or turkey, especially if you have beans. You could use, if you're trying to avoid animal protein, you could use black beans for kind of a taco frittata, or chickpeas. I made shakshuka on Friday. You could make like a shakshuka frittata and put some chickpeas in. And then, so there's my sausage. There's my bacon. You could almost do like a quiche Lorraine frittata, just no crust. And those are kind of random. And then lastly, cheeses. So got my ricotta done. For the Italian frittata, I've got a little white cheddar here. This is Kenny Mattingly's farmhouse cheddar. And he is over in Austin, Kentucky. We love talking about Kenny. It's a great story. He basically managed to save his family's dairy farm by starting to make cheese. He toured around the US, toured some other countries, learned from a lot of people, and now he has at least 2 dozen wonderful, consistent cheeses, high quality, and he's a very ethical businessman. So we like talking about Kenny over here. And I'm gonna grate that up real quick. You can buy pre-grated cheese. We've even, in talking about the students in the dorms, we've even said, like, if you're getting back when you could get a salad bar. If you're getting the salad bar, get a few extra ingredients, and then you can make your frittata in the mug or your omelet in a mug with those ingredients and just a couple eggs. Something, if they actually just, and they really seem just thrilled that they can kind of cook rather than heat up something frozen in their dorm. So there's the cheddar. And then I'll grate just a little bit more of the pecorino. It's great as a topping. And then again, we have takes a little bit of stuff to fill up the frittata cups. So here's the pecorino, a little bit harder cheese. Harder cheeses are fine though. Anything that's really melty, anything like the ricotta, we'll just do little dollops throughout it. Lily, what do you like to put in your frittatas? You don't like frittatas though, do you?
You've brought me around. Egg pies. It's not my top favorite, but I do like the little muffin tin ones. I feel like those are gorgeous, and you can make like a quick breakfast burrito if you have those on hand.
Yeah.
Like have two, wrap them in a tortilla, a little bean situation. But I love a red pepper, fresh basil.
Yes, yes, that's delightful.
Butternut squash and blue cheese, yum.
Yes, I almost did that today. I was like, I've done a lot of orange lately, and I'm doing the sweet potatoes. Okay, so that's our meats, folks. I hope you have yours together. Do you have any specific questions on what you're preparing if you're cooking along with us?
So here's a question I sat on. If you're doing the mug version with cottage cheese, how much cottage cheese in the mug? Or ricotta even, if they're interchangeable?
With the mug, that's 2 eggs tops. So I wouldn't put more than a couple of tablespoons because you're going to start to interfere with the protein's ability to form a structure. Yeah. If you put too much in there. So yeah, I'd say a couple of tablespoons, like a dollop, and then maybe add your eggs and then maybe a dollop on top. That would be nice.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with the traditional frittatas. So I'm going to get my kits over next to the stove. I'm going to move the camera onto the stove so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm using you'll see this, I'm using a bag of confectioner sugar to kind of weigh down my tripod because I've got the iPad on the tripod. That's what I'm trying to say. Tripod, iPad and tripod. Okay. I'm actually going to probably, let me do the most important part. So I'll lift you up here just a little bit. I've got to crack my eggs. All right. So I'm making smaller frittatas. I'm doing probably about a 6-inch pan. So I probably will do about 5 eggs per on this. Also, I don't want a lot of frittata left over. If you are doing a 10, 12-inch pan, go by the recipe and you'll need at least 8 eggs. It all kind of depends. That's what I'm saying, is there's no recipe for this. It depends on how much filling or veggies and meats and other things you put in, how deep your pan is, how wide it is, how much the eggs are going to spread out. So this is where it's kind of like the omelet, where you're sort of eyeing how your eggs go in there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and crack all my eggs for the frittatas, but I'm just going to use them as I need them. So I've got a dozen. I'm going to crack those for just in case, for the 2 frittatas in the 6-inch pans. Are there any questions? I may be muddying the waters on that, but the recipe for a 10 to 12-inch skillet is 8 eggs, just to try and clarify. All right, and now you do not have to add any dairy. However, if you have dairy, then you can add, I don't do too much. All this does is just a little tenderizing to the eggs. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick after opening those. It just tenderizes the eggs slightly. Some people like to put cream in their eggs. I find that a little too rich for my taste, but I'm just going to do about a couple tablespoons of a splash of milk here. And then I'm just going to take the whisk. You can take a fork. With frittatas, you can really incorporate some air. So you don't have to, you know, with an omelet, you just kind of mix till the eggs come together and then you stop. But you can really incorporate air with a frittata because it's going to rise. That's why we need a huge mug for the frittata in a mug. You can kind of beat on them a little bit. I'm going to do about half a teaspoon of salt. You could add fresh herbs if you want. Don't have a lot of those this time of year. Okay. Now, what you want to do first, though, so I'm going to come back over to this camera, and I'm going to start my burner, and we're going to go medium high at first just to heat all of the ingredients that are going in. I'm going to start with the potato, Brussels sprout, cabbage, mushroom one. And I'm just gonna heat up my pan and then pour in, that's a bit much. I just need enough oil to barely coat the bottom of the pan. Now we're gonna bring this to medium-high heat because we are gonna saute everything first, but then we're gonna lower it down because we don't wanna get our eggs super dark because they are going to continue to cook in the oven. Actually, I may go ahead and get the back one hot too. Now you can start to see that my oil is shimmering. So I'm going to throw in my shrooms, and see, I don't even think I can use all of those. And then the cabbage and the Brussels sprouts. You want enough, I'd say, to come up like about 1/2 to 2/3 of your pan. This is going to cook down. So that's why I put that in there. I've still got the potatoes to go. Don't forget that. A little bit of salt. That'll help it give off its water. You also could use a little clarified butter or butter in the pan. You just have to be careful about those milk solids burning. We'll get that going. And then over here, this oil is nice and hot. I can see it shimmering from here. And grab a hot pad if you need to. I'm going to start that off with the onions, peppers, and mushrooms. And I'm actually going to cook all of these, even though I may take some out for the cups, so I can go ahead and save some time and get those going.
See, can you rotate the iPad a little bit so we can see both pans?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so this is just peppers and onions back here right now. I'm gonna let those give off their water, cook a little bit. See, this is starting to wilt down. And I just want to remember now, this is gonna cook a little more. So you don't have to get everything super done, but you do want, the purpose of cooking everything to begin with is to get it to give off its water, one, so that you don't have a watery frittata. That wouldn't be appetizing. And then two, to start the cooking process on things that are a little bit harder, denser, more fibrous, might take a little while to break down. Now, while that's going on, if you are doing the muffin tin version, right here, I'm gonna go ahead and take my spray oil and I'm just gonna coat my muffin tin really well. So I want to get you going no matter what version you're doing with me today. And I mean really well, because the cheese is awful when it's fixed to a muffin tin. Our students hate cleaning muffin tins because of this. All right, I'm gonna give this a stir. It's really getting going. This is starting to, yes, cook those. Gonna add in my mushrooms there. And yes, this is an overfull pan, and that is on purpose. We're gonna take some of that out for our cup. And now that this has cooked down, I'm gonna put a few slices of our potato in here. I just want kind of one little layer of potato. Has anybody made a Spanish tortilla or kind of an open faced omelet like this before? So I want a little pepper on those potatoes and with all that cabbage. All right, now this pan is getting really close. I'm gonna get a little bit of the oil on those potatoes. Don't need to cook those are done. But I wanna let those potatoes warm up and maybe even get a little fried. In here. And then you kind of tap once everything gets done, you sort of tap it down. I'm gonna turn the heat down to about medium. Okay, let's stir this one over here. Because I want that to get going. And we're just gonna set these up to knock them down. All right, now, so hopefully whatever kind of frittata you're making, if you're making the traditional one, you're getting close on your veg. We'll have 2 demonstrations of this. You're gonna pour in egg, but you are not going to like scramble it around. The one thing we have to stop the students from doing when we show them how to make frittata is to not like make scrambled eggs. So turn your heat down, pour it in, and you want it to just kind of cover your ingredients like a pie, like you're making a quiche. And then you give it a second to make this little shell type thing right here. If you feel the need, you can kind of do that omelet thing where you sort of go around the edge and lift and let the egg mixture kind of get underneath there. It's a little bit hard to move this. There we go. Let that pour under there so your veggies aren't sticking, and see it's pulling away right there. So we're not making scrambled eggs and we're not making an omelet. We're not gonna flip this. You can flip it over. That is very traditional to flip the whole thing over, but all I'm gonna do is put it in my 400-degree oven. I am gonna put a little of the cheddar on top of that. I think that would go nice. So you just sprinkle a little on top. And you notice my pan is not completely full, and I'm just gonna slide that in the top shelf. If you have a broiler, then you can do that. Now, I'm gonna finish up this. Get that going. And I'm gonna start filling my cups over here. I'll set that there so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm gonna do a little bit of something different in each one. And like I said, this is where it's great for the family. So if you have picky eaters and they just want like bacon and cheese, then they can do bacon and cheese. And then mom and dad can have all of the different kinds of veggies. If you, or if you have someone who's allergic to red pepper, then they can leave the red pepper out. But if someone else likes it, they can have it. So I'm gonna just start putting in some of my random ingredients. Little sausage here. What I like to do sometimes is just like make a row of each different kind so I can sort of keep up with what I've done. Maybe some bacon over here. I'm going to use this broccoli with the potato. And by itself. And then a little cheese on that. So we've got almost like a stuffed potato here. And I'm going to use some of these veggies with the sausage and with the broccoli. Do some roasted red pepper and maybe some Brussels sprouts with the bacon. The real thin leaves of the Brussels sprouts so that they cook. All right, so you can see how everybody in the family could have their own. All right, so these are done. I'm gonna pour out some. Taking a bit, so I'm gonna turn my heat down to medium. I'm gonna add just a wee bit more oil to the pan because things are trying to stick on me. Gonna add a little bit of that sausage. Some of that pasta, right? Remember our pasta? And that's already seasoned, so I'm not gonna season this dish much more. Gonna pour in my egg mix. So this is turned down to medium. Everything's kind of evenly distributed. Pour in the eggs to kind of cover up the ingredients. And then I'm gonna do dollops of this lovely ricotta mixture. This would be good with some basil in. If you have some fresh basil still going. I lost mine when it turned cold. I didn't bring it in. It was not happy, even once I brought it in. So dollops of that. And sort of alternate with this tomato sauce. You can also wait till it's finished and do the tomato sauce, but I want some of this in here. You could also mix the pasta with the tomato sauce. That's what they do in Italy a lot. Okay, there's that. So now I'm gonna take that one. It's getting an edge on it. I'm gonna stick that in the oven. All right, and now I'm pulling out our first one, nice and set in the middle. And you always wanna let your frittatas set. And while we're doing that, we'll finish up these. So I'm gonna put some of that mushroom, onion, and pepper in here. And we're gonna fill these with egg mixture. I may have to make a little more egg mixture, but we'll see. You can add cheese on top. I would only add the cheese on top and really try to keep it in the cup because it does stick really bad to the sides, worse than the egg does. So I'll only use a little bit. Now these are wonderful in that you can make dozens at a time. You can pop them in a freezer container, like a bag, freezer bag, and then you pull them out as you need them. You can microwave them from frozen, and you have a great quick protein and veggie full breakfast. So we'll do a little of the pecorino here. We'll leave the other two plain. And then you don't want these overflowing. And that's hard. So you kind of want to underfill because these eggs are going to puff. Anytime you use eggs in a container, underfill it because the eggs will puff. And when they puff, the little bit that gets on the outside burns. And that's one thing I can't handle is a burnt egg. So
I'm with you. The only thing worse than burnt egg is burnt popcorn.
It just never goes away.
Oh, it lingers.
All right, need a few more eggs to finish up my muffin tin. And you can make these, as Lily was saying, in the mini muffin tins, and that's great for little ones if they're starting on those foods, because you can, it's like a little 4-bite. You don't have to worry about how much they're getting. And they cook really quickly from frozen. And like Lily said, it's great to toss these into a tortilla or a piece of crusty bread and make almost like a tortilla sandwich like they do in Spain. And that's delightful as well. It's a great breakfast on the go. But you don't have to go through the drive-thru for it. That always makes me feel better. All right, let's finish filling these. And now, of course, this will not take as long, depending on the size of your frittata. Like the really big ones may take about 15 minutes to set in the middle. If it's still a little soft, just not jiggly or liquidy, you could probably pull it out and it'll finish with carryover cooking. But for the little ones, probably about 10, 11 minutes, especially if you get it going really well on top of the stove. Now for these, it probably will take about that long just because we haven't started them. And we're gonna let that one go like that because I wanna get these in. So we can pop them out. Now, last but not least, I'll bring you back over here. Oh, I kind of mushed up my area where I set my. There we go. All right, let's get all this out of the way, and then I'll show you the frittata in a mug. So we've done this several times with a couple classes. It's been really successful. The students have loved doing it much more than I ever thought they would. And it's super simple and it's stuff that they can keep. So if they can get some eggs, which they do carry in the pantries on campus, or Euclid Kroger is within walking distance of campus. So these are the things like I said, I think that they can get their hands on fairly easily. So 2 eggs, spinach, those roasted red peppers. Also, the sun-dried tomatoes would be good because those are really shelf stable. Like a tablespoon of milk, tiny bit of cheese. And they probably have the already grated. And then I also listed some onion powder, garlic powder, dried chives, things like that, if you have them. That is just to add a little flavor to it. I've already got that mixed up because this is left over from some of the kits that we've made. So I'm going to toss that in. And this is my UK swag mug. I love this mug. This is a gift. And what I like is that it's big. So it's big enough. So you need one of these sort of extra large mugs. If you don't have a really large mug, I would use a bowl. This is one that just came from the Dollar Tree. And it's microwave safe. So that'll work as well. So I've got a mug and I've got a fork. I do have the students whisk the eggs in a separate bowl. That's not necessary, but that way they can sort of actually really incorporate those without having to mishmash all of the veggies in with it. So I'm gonna open the spinach. Oh, you can, if you have a little spray oil, or even if you have a little cooking oil, it does help for the frittata to come out of the mugs to give it a little spray, or a little, take a little oil on a paper towel and rub it on the inside. And I'm just gonna take some of the spinach, like a small handful, directly out of the bag. If it's not baby, you do wanna maybe take off really big stems, maybe chop it a little bit, but this is all baby, pre-washed. Just putting that down in the bottom of the mug. I'm gonna take around a tablespoon or so of the chopped up roasted red pepper and put that down in there. And let that sort of weigh down in the beginning, weigh down the spinach. And then I'm gonna break my 2 eggs into a separate bowl. That one's already open. There's egg number 2. I'm gonna put, if you have, again, milk's not necessary, but I have it, I'm gonna put just about a tablespoon in there, a little pinch of salt and pepper. And then this is just that mixture of onion powder, garlic powder, and dried chives. You could do a little dried thyme, dill, anything, any kind of dried herb that you like. And then fork, poke the holes or poke the yolks, and then give it maybe not that much of a whip so that all your powders don't go everywhere, but sort of whip it up, incorporate a little air. And then hang on, you wanna hang on to your fork though. Pour that on top of your veg. And then sprinkle in about a tablespoon or so of cheese. Now, I'm gonna go into the microwave. We're gonna do this 30 seconds at a time. You nuke for 30 seconds, stir it up with the fork, and then keep going until it gets done. And in this microwave here in the kitchen, I think it takes about 3 times, if I remember correctly. So I'm gonna do 30. And while I finish that up, I'm just gonna saute some of this kale with a little of that red onion.
T, would you put the cottage cheese on top of the veg and then eggs, or also put it on top like the hard cheese?
I would maybe put it on top of the veg. I'm not sure that it matters, because here's what you gotta do. You gotta put your fork in and stir things up. So what you're having to do, because microwaves cook so quickly, so you do end up mixing everything up. So it may not even matter. What they may wanna do is like do a couple of turns cooking it. If they want it kind of floating on top, do a couple of turns cooking it, and then add the cottage cheese. So 30 more seconds. And I'm gonna use a little olive oil in my skillet. And I'm tossing in some red onion that we cut earlier. Nope. Too many ingredients, y'all. Okay. Red onion from earlier. Let that saute just for like 3 minutes until it gets done. And here is the omelet in a mug. See, there's still quite a bit, and you want to break up. I don't think I finished. The microwave cooks so quickly so that these proteins are coagulating too fast. So they would get hard if you didn't do this step. And also it's breaking it up and making it more like a actual scrambled egg or omelet. So we're gonna go one more time. So that is probably where I would add the cottage cheese for the person with a question about that. This is just some washed kale. I leave a lot of the moisture on when I wash kale if I'm going to saute it, and that helps steam it a little bit as it sautés. Just a little tip and trick from old Chef T. I'm going to use my tongs and just stir this around till it wilts. And then in your recipe, I was like, you could add a shot of either some soy or I've got Maggi seasoning. You could also use some tamari or Bragg's aminos. If you don't eat meat and you have Bragg's aminos around, that would be really good in this.
I'm a big fan of the soy sauce or Bragg's aminos on kale. It seems weird if you're like, oh, but I'm not eating something with soy sauce in it. It's that little bit of umami, saltiness. It just works.
It's kind of like if you're a big fan of fish sauce, I think, you know, like sometimes some dishes, nothing to do with Thai food or Southeast Asian food, but some dishes are just great with a little splash of fish sauce. So here's where we are right now. And even though that's a little bit damp, this is where I would stop because I cannot take overcooked eggs. So, and this is so steamy and it's just barely moist. So I'm going to stop there. If you can't handle moisture on your eggs, and I know some people can't, then stop here. And I'm not going to stir that much more because if you want to actually dump this out on your plate and make it look like a little frittata cup, you don't want to break it up too much. Otherwise, you got a really nice scramble. This would be great on a bagel, Lily. Like this would be really good in the middle of a bagel.
That's a great idea.
All right, so we should have a second. Oh, yes. Oh, that one's still a little. My goodness. So we have some frittata to show. So I'm gonna dump out when I've got to clear out this board. Actually, I'll probably use a clean board because I've got raw egg on this one. Do as I say and not as I do, folks. I've left a huge mess out here today. All right, we'll get rid of this. Grab the clean board. Now, what I tell the students about flipping out a frittata is that you have to commit once you decide to do this. So what you may want to do is just slide a spat around, make sure that it's loose, and then you kind of have to go with it. 1, 2, and 3. You can do that even if it's in an iron skillet. So I'm going to cut this into wedges. This is the potato, Brussels sprout, cabbage, and mushroom. Look at that. Got a little bit too much on the bottom, but that can happen. And over here, now with these, all you have to do is let them cool down. You see they're starting to fall. They did puff way up, but they're starting to fall. You just need to let them cool down. I need to remember that handle is 425 degrees. Take either a small spat like this and go around the edges. And if you greased your muffin pan well and didn't get a lot of cheese on the side, you should be able. These are a little too warm to pop out. Again, you need to let them rest, and that lets those proteins sort of relax back into each other. So pop those out, serve them right then and there with maybe some biscuits or scones or and then some kind of side veg, cut up fruit. Wonderful brunchy breakfast. Or put them in that bag in the freezer, and then you can have them on the go. And I'm gonna make up our little, I am a biggie on lots of veg for breakfast, but I'm also big on telling the students once they know how to make frittata, oftentimes we'll have them make a salad to go with it. So while they're waiting for it to cook, we'll teach them how to make a vinaigrette, put a salad together. So you have frittata, lovely salad, crusty bread. It makes a wonderful dinner. It's cheap. It uses up stuff. It's a really great foundational recipe, and it can be used throughout the year. All right, so I'm gonna put this entree plate together. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything you've encountered, can you anticipate anything you might encounter in teaching something like this to your audience?
Quiet group today. I think you're covering a lot. Look, ooh.
There we go. So, isn't that a lovely meal?
Gorgeous.
Colorful.
Melissa wants to know if she can take a nap after this. I'm going to say yes.
Yes. Especially if you've made this and you eat it, then you really deserve a nap.
Ooh, I feel like if you made those sweet potatoes for a meal, those spiced sweet potatoes, then cut up the next day, put in a frittata would also be incredible.
That would be incredible. Talk about like with a little blue cheese. The combinations really are endless.
Yeah.
Especially every time I teach a frittata class, I think of something else that I was like, ooh, that might be nice. You know, start with what you know, start with dishes you love and just start deconstructing. Like, Lily, what's your the dish that you make with the kraut and the Polish sausage?
Kapustcha.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Kapustcha.
I think that would be good in a frittata. So that's just me, you know, with a big slab of rye bread. That would be great.
I haven't thought about sauerkraut and eggs. If anyone else has some favorite toppings, we still got a few folks here. Please share your ideas with us. We'd love to see them. I'll turn my video back on.
Yeah, and if you have cooked along with us and you have a finished plate, please show us. We'd love to see that.
We had a few people, someone was making mug and a few people had to jump off. So thanks everyone for joining us. We're just about at time. We've got time for questions or pointers on other cooking demos or things you might have coming up. Oh, hello, Melissa. Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
I've got to change my view here too. I can't see myself, but
we can see you.
Okay, so I've got.
Ah, look at that!
Look.
And
hold on, I need to change mine.
I did a big one.
Oh my God, you did both. I was wondering if anybody would join along.
And I did mini muffins.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, wonderful.
I have 3 large sons. I mean, like 6'6", 6'4", and 6'3".
Oh
and my husband 6'7". So this is lunch.
Perfect.
That's like a food for a week for me, and it's your lunch.
Yeah. That's great.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh,
did you say you're an NEP? You're an NEP educator?
Yes. Yes.
Does this feel like it could fit into your programming for those clients?
Absolutely.
Are there ways you would tweak it?
Absolutely. I have not tried a synchronous cooking yet, so obviously everything is virtual. So this really gives me confidence. That's why I wanted to do it all at the same time to see how it felt, and it was great. Thank you very much for all the tips.
Oh, great. Okay, and if you have any other questions or ideas in the future, please reach out to us. We're always trying to, you all are out in the field. I mean, Tanya's tackling the freshmen, and bless her heart, but you all have you have all different experiences. So we love to hear them.
Yes. So if you have ideas, you can either email me. I've emailed all of you, I do believe. So email me ideas if your clients are asking for something specific, or if you're running into a particular issue or problem. This is why I want to do these. I want to solve problems for you. And so we've got 3 more of these classes and then more recipe videos coming. So ideas would be great.
Looks like Kelsey's got something to show us.
Hey, I just want to say thank you, number one. I actually have been doing some synchronous virtual. I've been doing baking more so than cooking.
Ah.
So I think
Okay.
this was a great opportunity to kind of be on the other end of it. But I made let's see here.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
beautiful.
I put some cheese on top of mine, but some spinach and artichoke.
Yum.
See, perfect
Artichokes.
combination.
Yeah, but it was nice to be on the other end of things because I'm in 4-H, so I'm baking with kids. So it's kind of nice to listen to somebody else teach instead of me doing the teaching. So
Well, we're gonna switch places, Kelsey, because I don't do baking a lot, but we're gonna make cookies next week for statewide.
that's what I
4-H.
literally just did that last night. I did 2 classes of 12 kids, and we did like the rollout sugar cookies for cookie cutters.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
It
yeah.
was successful. I got lots of pictures back of successfully baked cookies. So
I love
thank
it.
you.
Wonderful.
If you haven't had the chance to do a virtual class with the 4-H kids, they're amazing. I just sit on the sidelines like this, but they're so precious and excited, and it's amazing.
They're always
makes
very
my
proud.
month.
Yes,
Yes.
they're so proud.
Yes, that's the best part when they hold up their little bowls. It's just it melts my
Yeah.
heart every single time.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Thanks, y'all.
And I'm cooking kale for the first time. I'm not entirely sure that it's turning out the way it's supposed to be though.
If
No,
it's
really,
tender and it tastes good, that's all it has to do.
See, I'm not
Just
a big
wilt
kale
it.
person, so I thought I was gonna try it. We'll see.
Yeah.
You
You
can
know what,
also
sometimes-
make a salad
Yep.
if you don't like it.
Massage it.
I'm not a big. See, I've tried it raw. I did not like it raw.
Okay.
So I'm trying the wilted in the skillet, and I do have some soy sauce to throw on it. So I'm hoping.
Yeah.
that'll-
Put the soy sauce on while it's cooking. Also, lemon juice is a thing that I find is
Mhm.
really great on kale.
Well,
I eat a
thank
lot
you.
of
If
kale.
you- yeah.
Tanya knows everything, but I eat a lot of kale.
We both eat a lot of kale. I mean, it's always around, right? And if your clients, if people are working with clients who are receiving boxes from Glean and stuff like that, they're probably always getting kale. So I like to put a lot of kale ideas out there.
Well, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Kelsey.
All right, thank you.
I also like hot sauce on kale or red pepper flakes. I could talk about kale. Let's do kale next. Just kale.
We'll
Kale.
just do it. We'll just do a kale class.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for those who shared the dishes they made. I know some folks are joining us from work and might join later. I posted in the chat the link to our Facebook page and our YouTube channel so that you can be sure to see our other videos and keep up on future classes in the future. Goodness. And yeah. Anything else, Tanya?
No, just stay tuned. We'll probably market this first to everybody who's attended today for the upcoming classes. So I'm sure in January. Oh, there we go.
Happy customers.
Yeah. How's your lunch? Just look for an email from me, and we'll put up these classes as events on our Facebook page. So if you want to make sure you get notifications for all of these if you want to attend the rest of the classes.
Perfect. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Tanya,
Thank you
for
guys
making me
so
hungry.
much.
Thanks, everyone who joined us. And we'll see y'all soon. Bye.